I'm Andrea Balance, and I'm the host of my podcast called A Balanced Guide to Spiritual Shenanigans: How to Navigate, Spot and Survive Spiritual Bullshit. What do I mean by spiritual shenanigans? I mean shenanigans in all their forms: funny, mischievous, naughty, every form that there is, and these actions are all done under the name of spirituality, and some of them are not very nice, and some of them are deeply beautiful and amazing. I've started this podcast because I'd like to offer a space to discuss things that are not necessarily TikToked about, mainly because my social media feed is just rammed with beautiful people doing yoga retreats and looking gorgeous with mountains in the background and so forth. Lots of gorgeous young people, loads of teeth, loads of money, lovely tans, very well fed. And my spiritual path has not been like that at all. And so I'm here to talk about the ugly side of spirituality, I suppose. Or maybe that's not fair because it all ends up being worthwhile. But I definitely feel that in general, the spiritual path is not glamorous, and I don't think we're all aware of that when we first start out. The only way I can describe it, maybe pictorially, is I see my spiritual path as a dream where you wake up and you're skidding across a frozen landscape in front of thousands of people, only wearing pants and unable to stop. So if you're a newbie, I'd hang around because you need to maybe be a little bit more informed on the things that you are likely to come across. If you are well into your spiritual path and it's not as glamorous as you thought it would be, I am hoping to be a voice of reassurance for you. And if you're old like me and have been through plentiful nights of the soul, etc., I want to offer you a place to share your experiences and give some tips and tricks to the younger generation. So this is very much been provoked in me by watching my social media, people spouting lots of really profound spirituality, but none of these gifts of spirituality come with health warnings, and I feel like we're not informed enough. We need to know the whole thing. So I hope to be covering I'm going to have to read these. I'm going to be covering topics like the real life effects of embarking on a spiritual path, the real life ramifications of trying to become a loving person, what that actually involves, what renunciation really feels like, what an experience of realization of death, what that actually affects your life like, not just all the it brought me into the moment, I was really present stuff, the terror it can cause because you don't know when you're going to die, and how, depending on how your opening has, your spiritual awareness is opened, you may find parts of you are more developed than others, and that can cause massive conflict, internal conflict. I want to talk about what do you do if your spiritual path feels like it's just going wrong, like you just feel like everything is wrong. How do you know whether you're in a cult? It's a thing to worry about, really. So many groups seem to isolate slowly, become cults. What do you do when you are neck deep in a dark night of the soul? Dark night of the soul is a term used, which I think most of us can relate to. But what maybe isn't mentioned is the fact that there's not just one dark night of the soul. There's often quite a few. And one of the side effects of this dark night of the soul is incredible loneliness. And I want to really talk about the reality of that dark night of the soul, but also talk about what benefits come from it. I mean, I do realize everyone's individual, but there are general benefits that we all fit. I would like to talk about the concept of negativity, because I find in spiritual and religious environments, you know, negativity is frowned upon. Oh, you can't be negative. But that gets slightly twisted. Using a very graphic and very clear example, if your teacher, pastor, or, you know, whatever, vicar is a sexual predator, when you try to raise awareness of this, people start accusing you of being negative and not having faith, etc. And I would like to just chat around that and really work out what negativity really is. That would lead me to talking about predatory teachers and predatory students. There is this tendency for me, I mean, other people may be a bit more savvy, but I flew into my spiritual path, arms open, and all my common sense went out the window. But every religious group, every spiritual group is the perfect opportunity for a predator. So how do you spot a spiritual predator, whether it's a teacher or you know, someone in the group? How do you remain on your spiritual path using your spiritual language without having someone manipulate that for you to make you feel like you should be doing what they say or going along with them? So I really would like to talk about that. Another thing I really want to talk about is, how do you connect to the spiritual path you've chosen? This is really important because for taking Buddhism, for example, everybody wants to be a bodhisattva, which is this amazing being who's unconditionally loving and incredibly wise and realizes emptiness and everything. And we're all encouraged to act like a bodhisattva. But what on earth has that lofty goal got to do with warty me, who gets annoyed if someone steals my chips? So I'd like to talk about how to connect you as you are now with your spiritual path and your goals, because it's through your humanity, through your weaknesses and your goals and your understanding of these lofty ideals of love and stuff, that you can become the spiritual person you want to be. It's not despite, or, you know, it's not that you look back on how you used to see things and think that's disgusting. It's all about integrating as you go along. Identity soup. I'd like to talk about identity and reality soup. That's what I call it anyway. When you find that you're changing really fast and you don't really recognize who you are anymore, and that can be incredibly scary. It can be isolating. And those the identity soup reality soup can be through wonderful things. It doesn't have to be all like horrific predatory nonsense. You can have like a very divine experience, but that's a lot of stuff going on there. And if you have like a divine experience, that can uproot your version of reality as you see it. Are you supposed to just start believing in like an invisible God or an invisible Buddha, or a council of higher beings? That whole like experience of bringing that reality into your everyday meat and potatoes reality can be incredibly unsettling. I want to talk a little bit about my experiences along the spiritual path, and I would like to talk about how do you get your own personal connection with the divine, because there is no point just learning about it. You have to have your own connection with whatever you see as the divine God, whatever, because if you don't have a personal connection with it, what are you doing? So I'd like to talk a bit about that. I've got 100 million things I'd like to talk about, but that's just a taster of the stuff I would like to look at. A little bit about me. I've been around spirituality all my life. When I was very small, when I was about 5, I had an experience of meditating. I didn't know it was meditating. I had no idea about the word spiritual, none of that. I was just sitting, and as I sat, I got very, very calm. And it was like I went inside my body, and I looked up like a tiny little me, and I looked up, and there was 2 lights, and I figured that they must be my eyes, like the windows to the world. And I playfully just like investigated it. So it seemed quite interesting, and that's just something I naturally did. I did actually begin to freak out, because I was like, what if I can never get back up to those eyes? But I did get back up, obviously. So there's been like little like unprovoked spiritual experiences that I've had along the way that have had nothing to do with an external religion or an external teacher. And then my parents became Mormons. My dad wanted to join the priesthood, so I have been a Mormon. I've given my testimony and everything. I also have had experience of being through Christian schooling in England, and experienced the Christian way of praying and so forth. I then went from that world into a working world. So I had to stop working, because you grow up, you got to work. And then I got burnout from working in a village called Ravenswood Village for the most amazing people that all have learning difficulties. And I experienced a real period of burnout at that point. From there, I started to wonder what was wrong with me. So I, like everyone else, seemed to find life easy. Everyone was smiling, shopping, living their life, going to work, coming back from work. And I was just absolutely trounced by life. And I was only 20, 21, 22. And I just figured that I must have been approaching it all wrong. It has to be, something in me. So I took myself back to my roots, had a look into the Mormon faith again, because I wondered whether I'd internalized some teachings that weren't working for me or something, and I got to know the Mormons again. But I ended up falling out with them because they told me Jesus wouldn't shake the hand of someone who was gay. And I threw them out, and I said, I'm not interested in Mormonism if that's what it is. I don't know whether it's still like that. I've been watching some Netflix stuff on Mormonism. Maybe it's getting a bit more progressive. I don't know. And this burnout took me to art school, and in this period of time I watched this evangelical TV program, which I wouldn't have normally watched, but I was investigating everything. And the amazing evangelical guy, he was all full of passion and and everything, and he was saying about God, and he was saying, like, you can't carry on the way you're going, like you can't just like crawl up to God, hiding your eyes and full of shame and all of this, because he is your father, he was saying. So would you do that to your dad? And your dad would reach for you and say, why are you acting like that? And he said, God feels the same way. And that opened the doors for me to think about personal connection with the divinity, with divine, whatever, that you could have a personal connection, that God would see me as his child. It kind of opened up a door of understanding. And then somewhere along the line I heard a story about if you met Jesus, there'd be no point hiding your ugliness, your internal ugliness from him, because he'd be able to see everything about you straight away, just see you, warts and all, and he would love you anyway. And these two teachings that I got randomly really focused me and made me think about a spiritual path. And from there I went through to art school that led to Buddhism, and then Buddhism blew my mind. I was just like, wow. The meditation was the first thing, to be able to learn how to quieten my mind, quieten the voices, the criticism, the internal waffle, all of that, just to be able to have like 5 minutes of just like no waffle in my head. And I was blown away by it, and I had a few experiences in my meditations, but also the teachings really hit me hard. Sorry. And I was blown away by their concept, renunciation, because I had been experiencing it. Nothing gave me happiness, and I thought, well, there was something clearly wrong with me, because nothing here gives me the happiness that's promised. And then so I read about renunciation, and I was like, well, there must be something in this school of thought that I connect to, because I haven't heard this from any of the other religions that I've been near. And renunciation was really the hook that got me into Buddhism. And I ended up getting involved with a Buddhist group called the New Kadampa tradition, and I ordained as a nun in their tradition. But now I ended up strobing for many reasons, but mainly because I felt like, well, I wasn't wanted. I can do a podcast on what happened to me, but the general feeling was, towards the end of me being involved with them, you weren't allowed to read any other Lama's books. You had to just read the Guru's books, and this was the one and only true path to enlightenment, and you could only really do it through Geshe Khalsa Gyatso. And for me, that just didn't make sense. We're all so diverse, aren't we? Some people are born into money, some people are born disabled, some people are, have wonderful lives. Other people have absolutely awful lives. nobody's the same. No, I just couldn't work out how one path was going to be the one way to enlightenment. So I disrobed, leaving the group and becoming a civilian again. Really devastated me. And I ended up with spiritual PTSD because of that group. And because of the way it all played out, it was just the most uncompassionate experience. And there is no real support for people who are having these really powerful, apparently negative to most people experiences, but they are a very essential part of the path. And I don't think I've come across many groups that have the time or energy to support you, you know, when your whole reality turns upside down. You just become a problem and you're basically you know, shoved away in one way or another. And I really feel like the experience of the growth is hard enough without adding extra layers of rejection and isolation. So this podcast has many goals, but one of them is to reach those people who are in these states of unspeakable confusion and pain. For example, bringing to light stages like when you first start opening up and you see everything as in a spiritual way, you can experience this like long period of disgust. And all the people that are walking blindly through life, you don't just like think, oh well, I wish they wouldn't do that, that's a shame. You actually feel disgusted by them. And for the longest time I just thought I'd gone mad, like I was like so full of my spiritualness that I couldn't even look at so-called ordinary people. And I just really could have done with someone saying to me, actually, it's not the people you're disgusted by, it's the state of mind, it's the fact that they are unaware and really giving me a chance to investigate without shame and all the internal nonsense that I put onto it, what that meant for my path and for me. You can also get like this sense of disgust when someone you love dies, not towards the one who's died, but like for the people out there who don't understand that life is so short, you know, because you get shoved into a state of unpredictability, and everyone else seems to be like sleepwalking. So yeah, part of this podcast is to let people know they're not alone, and not to feel like they're somehow doing it wrong because they're not glamorous enough. Because if I had a t-shirt, it would say spiritual growth is not glamorous. It is ugly. It's ugly crying. It's anxiety, it's the loss of all sorts of things. It's just, I don't understand how anyone gets through it smiling. I don't get it. So I also want to give people a chance to share their experiences. As old in the tooth people who've made it through 42 nights of the soul, I've got a Facebook page called it would be at Spiritual Shenanigans, and you know, if you want to put up some tips and tricks and talk to people, I would really appreciate it if you were up for doing that. And anyone who's new, if you wanted to ask me a question, get my angle on something, then that would be how you could do that. Because the whole point is I've spent a lot of my path in a state of isolation, and I don't want that for anyone else. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to try keep it short. I don't really know how I'm going to keep half of this short, but I'm going to have a go, try and essence it all down. So like I say, go to my Facebook page and leave me questions and so forth. Thank you for listening to me.